Hello and good evening. I'm Abdul and we're here with Moving Forward. And of course, my wonderful co-host is here as well.
Dara Hamilton, and thank you, Mr. Ali, for allowing me to move forward with you today. And I wanted you to know that today I got a very special surprise in the mail, and it was my copy of,
oh my goodness.
of your book. So
you're amazing. Yeah, I'm going to have to sign
that for me.
Sign that
at the
a
end
little
of the
bit.
show today.
Absolutely
so
right.
much.
Yes, and Pastor Skepple, you're our guest, but you're going to have to get one as we go ahead too. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, but listen, you're full of surprises, you know, full.
I had to hide it under.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to be here with you once again, and of course we got to thank Mr. Earl Morris and George Matthew, because without them we're not going to be able to function. Tonight we want to talk a little bit about fatherhood, and one of the reasons for this is because Father's Day is coming up pretty soon, and we really need to look at that issue. It's a very, very important issue in our lives today. And so we are going to get some help in really understanding what fatherhood is or isn't, as the case might be. And of course, we do have Pastor Dexter Skepple here, and most of you would have heard of him. He's connected with Speed the Word Ministries. And of course, over the years, he not only gives the scripture and things of that particular nature, but he really does believe in what he says. And so we're glad to have him. And the whole idea is to begin to get a sense and understanding of what fatherhood means in these days and ages. Father, nice to have you with us, and perhaps you could just begin, give us a little idea, a little background of church and where you are today. Then we could go into the fatherhood business in a little more detail.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I've been pastoring for almost 25 years on St. Croix. I am a commercial pilot. I also...
You mean you fly planes?
I actually fly planes, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. I work as part of the Office of the Governor as far as gun violence prevention. I'm part of that group. I'm excited to be a part of that so we can help reduce gun violence in the territory. And we also, I'm a baseball coach, coach baseball, Little League Baseball. I love it. Interact with young men to help them prevent certain type of behaviors. That's just a little few things that I do. I'm excited. Of course, my first obligation is to be a husband and a father, and that's one of the things that I absolutely love.
Yeah, well, that's really good, and I'm so excited to hear that you fly planes as well.
Yes.
And one of the beauties of life, Doctor, is that you can't really always look at people and know who they are and what they do, you know. Sometimes you got to try and talk to them and find out what it's really all about. And of course, you mentioned fatherhood. So do we, as a rule, just grow up to be fathers, or is it a process generally that we have to learn how to be fathers along the way? What's your take on that?
I think, in my humble opinion, is being a father is something that you could learn or have somebody to mentor you or have a good role model, as in this is how fatherhood should be or what it is. So most of us, not all of us, but some of us do not have a great example of who a father or what a father should be. We mostly have a view of what a father should not be. So I'm using it in my context for where I grew up in. I grew up in a traditional mother and father type setting. Both of my parents were there. But of course there were struggles on the father side of things. And I think in order, so I've learned what some of the things not to do, and I've learned some things to do. The first thing that I've learned to do is you have to be a father that listens to your child. And I think that's the key, is to listen. I think that's the foundation of fatherhood for me, is to listen. I give you a prime example. I take my son to the basketball court to play basketball, and 95% of the times I just take him to the court and I sit down and I watch him play. for me, that's great fatherhood to watch him play. But he said to me one time, he said, Dad, it's not just I want you to come to the basketball court and drop me off, but I want you to play. That's a royal, okay, that's a whole nother level now. He said, I want you to actually play with me.
He wants you to be engaged with him.
He wants me to be more engaged. He doesn't want me to just take him to the beach, but he wants me to be in the water with him. And that's his example of where fatherhood starts. And I think that's where we could become better fathers by listening to our children and not just saying something, I'm a good father. Obviously there's a lot more to it than just listening. But I think it's important that we learn how to love our children. Everybody's going to require a different kind of love in a different way, in a different how. So it's a learning to love them and to find out the things that they like to do. One of the things that I learned is my son, I want him to become a baseball player. A baseball player. So I took him to a baseball camp when he was 5 years old. And after he was done with it, I kind of realized that he wasn't moving as enthusiastic as I would want him to be, how he would do things. And he kind of just tell me he don't like it. That hurt my feelings. But it was just the way that he felt, that he wanted something else. So the following year, I took him to a basketball camp, and he loved it from there on. So I think that part of the listening and the loving is to find out what your child like, and to kind of like mold them and kind of put them in that particular direction that they wanted to go. So I think part of not only listening but loving your child, I think that's important for us to spend time and listen to them and to hear what they have to say and to be a part of their lives, not just on the external part, just like on the outside, but actually listening and finding out what they want and how they want to be, what they want to be in life, and to how we can foster and make them better human beings. And I think that how I was taught or how I learned, you can learn from your child. Your child can actually help you be a better father. A lot of it. So for me, it's not just, and if there's ever a conflict between the mother and the father, you don't want the child to be a part of that conflict. You want to always, as best as you can, in my opinion, to be that parent that's always looking for the best interest of the child. So a lot of times, even when we do baseball camp, like the baseball camp that we're in right now, a lot of times we get to see what kind of household that child lives in, because sometimes you may only see the mother, and sometimes you'll never see the father. And I think that, of course, there could be 1,000 things that the father's at work or a type stuff, but you could tell the fathers that are involved in their child's life, to me, in my experience, their behavior is tremendously different.
Can you say a little bit about what that difference looks like?
They're more disciplined. They're more easy to accept correction. They're more structured. They have somebody that they're kind of responsible to in their behavior and their attitude. And that father brings that, in my opinion, because they know how to behave, because you can easily go, I'm going to tell your father. And that's a different way sometimes than I'm going to tell your mother. So for me, what I get to see a lot of times is the behavior of a child, sometimes, not all the times, is sometimes it's linked directly to whether they have a father and what kind of father. You can have a distant father, he's just there, type stuff. I give you a prime example. There was one child, not part of the camp, so I'm taking him home one day. He accidentally got to the wrong ballpark, and he shows up at the baseball field. And I approached him. I said, you're here with your glove. You want to be part of the team. He said, well, I taught such and such was practicing. I said, come on, be a part of the team. Anyhow, on my way taking him home, I said, where do I take you? And I said, who do I call? And he was confused, as in who he calls. I said, you call your mom? Who is your mom? Where's your mom? So long story short, I took him home to his aunt's house.
I see.
So when I took her to his aunt's house, I'm aware talking to him, and I said, where's your father? He said, oh, he's in the States. Where's your mother? Oh, my mother is in the States. So who's taking care of you? Your aunt. This is not like if your aunt is taking care of you that you're less than. This is not what I'm trying to say.
I understand, yes.
The first thing that he said, I said, how are you doing in school? He said, oh, I just got suspended. I said, you got suspended? For what? He said, I got suspended for such and such and such and such and such. And then this is what he told me. He said, the last time I got suspended because I came to school with a gun. Now, that hurts my heart because it shows a lot of times that it's sometimes the parent or the lack of involvement thereof of a father. Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes it brings that kind of behavior on a child. So the absence of a father sometimes, not all the times, sometimes it brings a certain type of behavior to a child.
Part of the problem that dads in general face, men, is that we might feel as though, well, listen, in order to prove myself as a man, I need to have as many children as possible. That could be 6, 8, 10, 12, you know, and I ain't studying really about looking after them and things like that. Their mother going to help. But that gives me the sense of being powerful, that I can, that's what I could do. So that's one of the problem areas, and I think it starts off in the mind in terms of how you see yourself as a person in that setting, as opposed to, well, if I have 8, 10 children, they need to be looked after. How am I going to split my time up with all of them and show them the love and caring and so forth that's needed? So I say all that to say this, that it could well be that when we talk about fatherhood, we also have to talk about how we see the process, how we understand it. Maybe we have to grow up into the fatherhood situation as opposed to what we've known in the past. So to me, it's a fairly complex situation. May not be necessarily for everybody.
Right.
But if in your mind, listen, as a dad, all I need is 10 children, and then I'm good to go. I have done my bit. But you're not able to manage their lives in the way that, a meaningful kind of way.
Well, unfortunately, the way I see it, just my small world, a lot of times people start family and don't even realize that they have started a family. You know, they have a child, and they have another child, and before you know it, you got 2 kids, and you have really no place to put them. You know, so sometimes a lot of it is sometimes an economic structure that's in place to us. It just keeps us having more children, and more fathers sometimes don't really understand their responsibility as a father, and sometimes that creates the problem all by itself, especially if a man is having family or having kids in multiple households. You know, this one particular friend of mine's, her son had 4 kids in 4 different households. 4 kids in 4 different households. So you can imagine the stress, the strain, and the struggle that brings to a father or brings in a family when that particular person has multiple places that they have to pay the attention to in order for them to have that type of family structure.
And it's almost impossible to pay enough attention to each of those children across those households for it to make a meaningful difference in their lives. So I have a question for you. Well, I have many questions for you, of course. And it's something related to that. One of them is because I've heard about some men who do just want to make children, and they're not necessarily planning to be involved in those children's lives necessarily. They just say, I want you to have a child for me. But they're not wanting to necessarily have a relationship with that child.
I think in certain cultures it's promoted, it's accepted, it's something that's embraced.
To just make children.
Just to make children and not to father them. And that child sometimes goes
that shows you're a real man.
Yeah. We had a program called boys to men. So we have these
yeah.
young men that we had in the house, and these were mostly young men that were fatherless in a setting. And this young man wanted really bad to meet his father because he never met his father before. And when he lashes out, he'll lash out and he'll say something like this: "You ain't my father."
Right.
Yeah, so, yeah, so he'll just put it on me like, you know, when he get upset, "You ain't my father. You trying to be my father. You ain't my father."
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of times that young man wants to have that initial contact. And I say this with all respect in the world. Sometimes a young man don't know the condition that their father is in.
Correct.
And sometimes that mother is trying to shield them from him because of the condition that he's in at that time. That's not all the case most of the time, but for this particular case, that was the situation.
I wonder if that's the case a lot of times, because otherwise maybe that person would be present if they were able to be present and they had the skills, the interest, and so on and so forth, that they would show up. You understand?
Right.
And then I was listening to you earlier talking about listening and loving and being available to hear what your children have to say and what they're needing from you. And I'm recalling, I was listening to the radio one day, and part of the conversation really was about children needing to listen to their parents. You know, that tends to be a lot of our focus, where it's like children must listen to their parents. And I heard you talking a lot about parents also being willing to listen to their children.
Yeah, right.
And so I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that in terms of from the perspective of a man, you know, and fatherhood around that issue, because I feel like it's a contentious issue where some people are like, well, you know, the children don't have rights, they don't have any say, they don't have, and that was the general theme of that conversation. And yeah, so talk to me about the benefits of being able to listen to your children and the, you know,
well, I think
thing.
it depends on what era that you come out of. You know, if you're older, your parents could say, "Man, it's my way on the highway, be quiet." This generation of kids, it's not the same way. They got, you tell them A, they got B, C, H, you know, and sometimes it depends. It really depends on what era. And my era that I come from, you cannot say that to your parents. You cannot say that back to your parents.
You can't say right. And so, but what we were talking about was being in the beach. So I would think that children need to be able to say to their parents, "I'd like you to do this, swim with me in the water," or "I'd like you to play basketball with me," or "I'd like you to do this with me," and parents being able to hear what their children's saying or what their feelings are about a situation.
Like, for example, like when my sons say, "I want to play basketball with me," I mean, I am dead tired. You know, it's a long day. I just came back from a long day, and you know, as soon as I get to the house, you know, he got the basketball in his hand, and he wants to go to play basketball. So my energy is zapped, and I think that makes fatherhood difficult, because now he wants to play with you, and you have to find the strength, the time to be able to spend time with him. But going back to your question specifically, I think that a child should have something. In this day and generation, of course, they're going to tell you exactly how they feel, and they're a little bit more blunt. They're a little bit more, I won't say forward, but let's just say that there's no filter on the things that they're willing to say.
Some people,
and sometimes in our generation, we'll say that they're rude, you know. So I think when it comes to fatherhood, the key thing is sometimes, and we could be here all day talking about it, the key thing sometimes is that you have to, don't allow anybody to stop you, fathers, from loving your children.
Right, because sometimes there's this image that we have to be a certain way that doesn't involve being loving, caring, kind, considerate, and thoughtful about what's happening with our children. And I'd also like to plug this, because I believe it is true, about how Black fathers tend to be more involved. You know, even though we have this stereotype out there that Black fathers are absent and so forth, when they are involved, they are more involved and more caring and more attentive and so forth, as far as I recall.
It depends on where you're from and how you see things. There's some fathers who are not involved because they don't feel like they're welcome to be involved.
Well, that's true.
And sometimes they're prevented from being involved.
Yeah, say you can't see the children.
You can't because you don't put any money here, you know, or you're taking care of John Doe's children and you're not taking care of your own. So a lot of the conflicts that starts, sometimes it stays and it begins to grow. So I think if you're a father out there, don't allow anybody to stop you from seeing or being involved in your child's life, because you have a right to be involved in your child's life.
And if you're not sure it's your child, you can get these tests and so forth, which will determine
right.
whether you are really the father
Right.
or not. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the issue of discipline and what that looks like and what you see as being appropriate discipline from the perspective of a father?
Well, I think when it comes to discipline of a child, I think there's old school and then there's new school. So we had a kid who wasn't acting right today. You know, he somehow wasn't right. So we know we can't hit you. Okay, we settled that fact that we can't hit you because take you to jail. So we have to find another way in which a child could be disciplined. And I found a great way to discipline them is to take away their cell phones.
Yeah, that could work. Yeah.
Put them out there. So we got a little corner under the tree that is nice and breezy, and we take their cell phones and we put them there to be quiet for a few minutes. Now that torture alone is worth more than any beating that they could ever have, because they are so much in love with technology. For them not to have technology for a certain amount of time sends them crazy and whatsoever.
Talking about beating, you know, I really don't think, or what the existing research now is saying, that you shouldn't be beating children. You should be setting rules and limits along and letting your children know that there are rules in life. The children make rules as to who they're going to talk to and who they're going to be friendly with. You can't get away from rules. So the beating up really doesn't help greatly. You know, what they need to understand, and if it could be done, is to get them to appreciate how to discipline themselves. So if they know how to discipline themselves, you don't have to turn around and do it as you go along. But certainly listening, making sure that you're giving them time to be heard, because they're people too. And often we still have this idea in mind that you should be seen and not heard. And you're talking to another human being. And you also have to let them know that if you do certain things, you might end up in jail, and people are going to take over your life. You're not going to have control over it anymore, because when you go down there, they'll tell you when to get up, when to eat, when to sleep, and whatever else. So if you want to be in control of your life, you got to be prepared to follow certain rules and regulations. And rules are there for all of us. There is no real big difference there. And I also wanted to indicate that there are some cases based on a little research which I had done here, which says that the percentage of working age women, 1948 to 2001, went up from 33% to 60%. We're now in 23. That figure may be as high as 80%. And what that could mean, looking at it, is that the women are saying, well, we're looking after everything. We got 2 jobs. We keeping the children and everything like that. Is there any need for you as dad? Or to what extent do you really matter in this relation? I got things under control.
Well, going back to the discipline of a child.
Yeah.
The Bible says you spare a rod, you spoil a child.
Yeah.
So there's no way that we could extract that from the Bible and say that it's not true. If you believe in the Bible, then that's what the Bible says. There is certain kids that has to be handled a different way, because everybody's personality was different. I'm gonna give you mine, so I won't talk about anybody else's. So when I come home to my mom and I told my mom the teacher did this, in her household, the teacher could never do anything wrong. That's her household.
Yeah, okay.
So don't tell me anything the teacher did. So I kept my complaint to myself. Secondly, this is for me now. I'm not talking about anybody else. I'm talking about for me. Whenever I got into an altercation with another kid, my mom would say, before I could tell her what they did, this is classical. She said, tell me what you did first.
Yeah.
So she'll sit back,
Yeah.
and she said, no, Dexter, tell me what you did. Oh, yeah, they did this to you, but tell me what you did to them to cause them to do this to you. I sit there, man, and she walk off. You know, she's from Antigua, so she gives me it in Antiguan twang. You know, she told me in Antiguan way, and she said, you tell me what you did. And because I couldn't figure it out, she left me right there standing up, and the problem was squashed in her world. Obviously, that's not the same thing in every which way, in every situation. But sometimes the parent, they never investigate what their child did first. So sometimes the parenthood, sometimes with the father type stuff, no, my father approached things in a complete different way than how my mother approached stuff. So there is different parents approach different things a different way. And when it goes back to fatherhood, sometimes fathers, they want to make sure that they protect their child regardless. And sometimes, not all the time, sometimes that child is the instigator.
Yeah, that's
Sometimes, not all the time.
not all the time.
Sometimes they're
You know,
instigator.
I wanted to highlight that, well, at
We
least
just
for
have
me,
about 5 more minutes.
that, you know, discipline is different than putting our children down and shaming them, abusing them, blaming them, you know, criticizing them, and so forth. For me, discipline would be around setting the limits, setting the rules, setting the boundaries, and applying consequences that are appropriate to that, but also providing, and also providing love, support, and nurturance.
Right.
And I wonder if sometimes people don't see that other side, that this is a supportive relationship that I have with you.
Right.
And I wondered, for you, what types of supports you believe fathers need that can help them be the fathers that are the most effective fathers today.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Spending time with them.
Yeah.
I mean, that cannot be substituted for anything else.
Okay.
Supporting them,
Right.
going where they go, being a part. It's a great thing to look out into the crowd and seeing your dad.
Of course.
It's a great thing. Moms are going to be there, but it's a great thing to be able to see your dad. And I think a lot of parents, a lot of kids don't get to see their dad.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
important.
I think also letting them recognize that they're no more important than anybody else, and nobody else is any more important than they are.
Right.
Because sometimes people get this idea in mind, and that could get in the way. So I think that that's really important, recognizing that there's rules in life. There is no way of getting around that. In a
Where
general
can
sense.
fathers get some support? People who are wanting to be better fathers, or looking at themselves and saying, am I a father?
Fatherhood.org. There is fatherhood.org that people could go to and look that over and to see where they are and what they might need to do. But it's a process, and you could grow up to be a really good father if you wish.
I think it starts, my opinion, is listening.
It starts with listening.
Yeah, I mean, because
Yeah.
if it starts, if it could just start there with just, hey, go to your child's school, basic stuff, know his or her teacher, listening whenever they need help. Hey, Dad, I want to be in the basketball court. Hey, could you buy me this? Being a part of their life physically.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
If you live away from your child, make it your business to spend
To see
time
them, yeah.
with them. They don't have to be a birthday, but find a time to spend with them. Let them know that they were special. When that young man, when I took him to see his father, he had no idea what his father looked like. And so we're in the baggage claim area, and he's looking around, and he have no idea
Who he's looking
who he's
for.
looking for.
Right.
And he's there.
So what are the benefits? If you take them to the games, be nice to them and things, what are the benefits for you as dad?
That you're doing what you're supposed to do. There's not like a but that's your responsibility as a father, is to And when a man has a kid over there and a kid over here and a kid over there and a kid over there, that's when the problems start happening. And sometimes manhood is expressed in a different way in our culture.
Right.
And that's what the problem is. That's where manhood is. I know
And
we're
then
out of time.
the only other thing I would want to say, one of the benefits is, I figure if you really work with the youngsters, look after them nicely and so forth, when you get old later on, they will be looking after you.
Right.
That's the benefit in terms of passing it on. They're not going to forget how nice you were to them and so on and so. You still got to tell them the truth about life. But when you get old later on, you are going to need somebody to give you a cup of tea or whatever you need to survive when your hand is shaking all over the place. And that is the other side of it. What you put into it is exactly what you will get. Or put nothing in, get nothing much out.
And I know we're kind of run out of time here.
Yeah.
I just would like to add how important you two fathers are for our community,
Right.
in terms of the example and the model that you provide, probably definitely for your children, but also for the rest of us out here in terms of how to be a man in the community, how to support each other and support
And I'm still learning about fatherhood.
yes. And I'm going to learn
Yeah,
a
still
lot
learning,
about
yeah.
you, Mr. Ali. And so I can't wait for this
Oh,
to
I
be
see.
signed after
Oh,
the
so
show.
am I supposed to sign it now? Or
You
what-
can,
what
or
is it?
sure.
Well, pass it over here.
Thank
Let me
you.
see. Yeah, this is my new book, you
I
know.
see,
There's
I
a
see.
little
I'm
bit
good.
about fatherhood
Oh,
in here, you know.
I need to keep
Yeah,
learning.
yeah, you have to keep your eyes open for that. So I got put here, best wishes to Dara Hamilton, and then I'm going to put you are the best.
Yeah.
A little fatherly
Yes.
encouragement.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's true, and today is the 16th, correct?
Yes.
Okay, 2023.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
that will
Ali.
be it, and then we just put that up just a wee bit so people can see what it looks like there in the front. And
Thank you.
the opportunity to really, have you written any books?
One. It's just a prayer book. It's a prayer book.
Oh, it's a prayer book.
It's a
Well,
prayer
write
book.
another one, man,
Yeah.
because you, let me see,
Oh,
you're
we've got to
flying,
see
you're
it.
doing
He's going to
this,
have to
you're
bring
doing
that book
yeah.
on so we can take a look at it.
Yeah, so you're passing it on.
Yes, yes,
You
I
know,
will. I will.
Absolutely. All right, folks, well, that's about it. And we want to thank our good friends, Earl Morris and George Matthew. Without them, we wouldn't be here tonight. And we're trying to move forward in as meaningful a way as we possibly can. And good luck, dads, for Father's Day. And just continue to do what you can to be nice to yourself and to your children. And recognize what you put in now with them, their benefits later on as you go down the road.